Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back, and I am excited. Yeah, I'm always excited, but I'm really excited about today's session because when thinking about taking it a level deeper than calories, which we got to, right? That's just obsolete. For a while there, people did take it a level deeper. They went down to macronutrients or figuring out high protein, low protein, high fat, low fat, carbohydrate restriction. But then there were these two people who were like, no way, that is not enough. I want to go even deeper. I want to go into micronutrients. So these are vitamins and minerals, and you'll learn way more about it today. But let's just put it this way. If you thought calories weren't where it's at, which they're not, and then you moved on to futzing with macronutrients, certainly can be very, very helpful, but just wait until you learn what understanding and being sufficient in micronutrients can do for your health and longevity and pronunciation abilities. So joining us today are my personal friends, Jayson and Mira Calton, just absolutely fabulous people. They have a huge number of letters behind their name, but I don't want to rest on that. I'll let them speak for themselves because when you hear the wisdom that comes from them, you'll just be overwhelmed like I was. They just released this brilliant book called Naked Calories, and I love it. And they are here to talk with us about micronutrients, health, longevity, and just how awesome they are. Jayson and Mira, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
It's great to be here.
Absolutely excited to be able to talk to everybody about our little love of micro, teeny little nutrients.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just get right into it, Jayson and Mira. There is so much attention paid to calories, and then if people aren't worried about calories, they're worried about whether they're low carb or high carb or low fat or high fat. And when we spent some time together on this year's low carb cruise, you guys just said, you dropped so many truth bombs on it's really about micronutrients and getting those from the right sources. But you could be eating low carb or high protein all day, and if you're not getting your micronutrients, you're not going to be healthy and fit.
Yeah, that's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. So we really start to take a look at nutrition from a different perspective. Of course, there's the macronutrient perspective, like you said, carbs, fats, proteins, how many of them should we eat, what ratios should we have, and what dietary philosophy are we overall going to adhere to and build throughout our lifetime. But all those things matter, but they're kind of on this side of our coin. We really want to look on the other side of the coin. We want to look at the micronutrients. Micronutrients, like you said, are those things like vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids, things that are found in our foods, but if we're deficient in them, like if you're deficient in calcium and magnesium and vitamin K and vitamin D, you're likely going to get osteoporosis. It doesn't matter if you're a vegan or a carnivore or what that macronutrient ratio is. If those essential micronutrient sufficiency isn't met, then we're going to open ourselves up for all kinds of health conditions, from headaches to poor sleep patterns to low energy, and even diseases as well, like cancer, diabetes, hypertension. And what we're going to talk about today is how that micronutrient deficiency has been linked to overweight obesity. Now, of course, overweight obesity is a huge pandemic we've been facing across the world, specifically and especially here in America. And we've tried everything, haven't we? I mean, you turn on the TV and you're going to see everything from, stomach zappers to aerobic classes to
Hopefully
some
no one's buying
concoction.
those things.
Yeah, we've tried every single thing in this country to try to lose weight, and what has happened? We haven't lost any weight. In fact, our weight has continuously gone up, 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 up. And so one of the areas that it seemed kind of like the elephant in the room to us, because this is our field of expertise, is why isn't anybody looking at the studies that have been done linking very specifically deficiencies in specific micronutrients with being overweight or obese? And in fact, we believe that micronutrient deficiency is a key puzzle piece in eventually eradicating this health condition.
I cannot wait to dig into those specific studies, and I just want to really highlight and emphasize what you said, because so often, in addition to not successfully losing weight on a national scale, for individuals who are successfully able to lose weight, like let's say people in the fitness or really, let's call it advanced physique world, if you look at the way they eat, it's really, again, it's so macronutrient and calorie focused. And it's great to eat, for example, a chicken breast. That's useful, but why not eat clams? Because clams also provide you with protein, but you get way more micronutrients. So I so celebrate you guys bring in the attention here, because you've got to eat calories for energy. You've got to get it from some source, macronutrients, but there's a vast underappreciation for the, like, okay, chicken is great, but like if you're interested in micronutrients, you'll probably look at some other options, right?
Absolutely. And it's the whole bang for the bite is what we like to say.
Yep.
Like, why are you eating in the first place? Because you need the energy, yes, which is, of course, obviously we all know that, but it's also, what is the food delivering to your body? What micronutrients, what vitamins and minerals are in every single bite? So we like to call those rich foods, things that are really micronutrient dense or micronutrient rich. And we like to tell people to look for the majority of things coming from micronutrient rich foods, because that's going to supply you with enough of these vitamins and minerals to not only keep you healthy, but also to allow you to lose further weight or start your weight loss product. One thing that people don't realize is when they go on these diets, they restrict the foods that they're eating, and they keep restricting them down, so they only have like 4 or 5 things that they're eating. But you're also only getting 4 or 5 sets of vitamins and minerals. And we tell people all the time, don't lose a pant size to gain a heart attack. Like, but it's, you know what I mean? They keep getting deficient in these vitamins and minerals, and they're opening themselves up for other, probably more serious illnesses and diseases to take place later on, even if they do get thin.
And getting the most bang for your bite that's such a brilliant point, is especially as we get more hormonally healthy and we re-regulate our appetite centers, we will naturally have less cravings, and it will be easy for us, like we will spontaneously reduce our caloric intake. Like spontaneous reduction in caloric intake has been shown study after study as we dial the quality of our diet up. But if we're eating less, it's even more important that we're eating nutrient-dense foods, right? Because like if you get a lap band surgery and you're eating 400 calories a day of Doritos, you're even worse off, right?
Right.
For sure.
You can't absorb your micronutrients anymore if you've had that surgery, so.
Yeah. Well, if you've got a lap band surgery, you've got gastric bypass, you have to be on a supplement for the rest of your life. Doesn't mean you're going to absorb that supplement. We can talk about that later. But yeah, the less calories that you eat overall, obviously, you're going to be getting the less micronutrients, even if you're focusing on micronutrient-rich foods, like we talk about in our other book, Rich Food, Poor Food. We show you how to find the most micronutrient-rich foods in the grocery store. But the idea is we have a 3-step approach that we talk about in Naked Calories. Food first, and we're like you, we're food first people. We want to get people to either make horizontal swaps like you talked about, like looking at clams, maybe a higher micronutrient-dense protein over chicken, or just learning how to pick the best chicken. Yeah. Understand the difference between a pasture-raised, organically raised chicken that's not been fed GMO corn and soy and hasn't been cooped up inside some kind of a dark room for its entire life, and one that's been out in the field pecking dirt and bugs and getting sunlight. So you don't necessarily have to change your foods, although I think it's a good idea to, like Mira said,
the Doritos and
break outside your typical spectrum of foods. But you definitely want to get as many micronutrients in as you can, and that's really the key when it comes down to how are we going to prevent these health conditions and these diseases, because ultimately that's what we want, isn't it? I mean, we want twofold whenever we do anything. We want to get in great shape, we want a great physical appearance on the outside, but just an equally important, or maybe more important, is are we healthy on the inside? Yep. So that's what we want.
And they reflect each other.
They do. They often reflect. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you look at somebody and they're like, wow, look how fit and healthy they look. But it turns out they've got arterial plaque, or they've got depression, or they're on 3 different medications. So what we want to do is we want to give you that holistic lifestyle where these micronutrients are not only going to help to reduce stress in your life, they're not only going to help to reduce the cortisol levels that could store body fat, but they're also going to make it so you don't have the diseases later on. And they're going to help you burn fat faster, and that's really the big key, that these micronutrients actually have been shown to, with the same amount of energy exerted, the same amount of exercise, they burn more calories. Now again, we're not talking about calories being the be-all, end-all, but when it comes to burning fat, if we can burn 25 more calories with the same amount of effort, 25% more calories, then that's a key. And there's one micronutrient we'll talk about later that does that.
Brilliant. Well, I'm super excited to get into those specific micronutrients and deficiencies, but one point I wanted to make sure we hit on, because I think it's easy for folks to hear this, get really excited, and then go get 60,000% vitamin C tomorrow. So when we talk about micronutrients, is more always better?
No.
No way.
No, it's more about you don't want to have too much of one because it can compete with another. You want to make sure just to be getting enough of all of them across the board. But megadosing is not our thing. More is not better. There's very specific amounts that you need for each, and educating yourself about what you need and the best forms of them and how to take them so they're actually absorbed. That's what really matters. It's not about just throwing it in there and saying, hey, I've got tons in there, hopefully it's going to work.
Yeah.
And this seems like maybe one area where the mainstream media kind of hit on some truth, because we know they struggle with the truth sometimes. But when, for example, they say eat the rainbow, or because if you're someone like me, I fell into this trap a couple years ago where I was like, oh, kale's really good for you. I'm going to eat 10 servings of kale a day. And it sounds like it would be much better off saying, okay, get your serving of kale, but then eat some other stuff too.
Yeah, we actually have in Rich Report Food, we have the whole spectrum of color, and we say that you're painting your own masterpiece every day.
Nice.
So every single day, you'd want the fullest palette of color to work from. So we say, have your really rich beta carotene, yellowy orange foods. You want to have your chlorophyll greens coming in. You want to have all of the different colors so you get all of the phytonutrients, and that you're getting the broadest spectrum of micronutrients in your food every single day.
Yeah.
And the last question, just for selfish reasons, before we get into this study, is we also hear so much in the news this idea of two things. One, organic versus non-organic, and I want to know what that role has in micronutrients. And then also cooking versus not cooking. Can we cover both of those?
Yeah. So the organic versus the non-organic. First of all, we like local food. Local food, again, where we take everything from that micronutrient perspective. So we want that, whatever food it is, to have as many micronutrients as it can have. So we don't want it picked prematurely. So if it's local, it was picked, it's been picked right. That's imperative.
The longer your food travels to get to you, the more micronutrients are lost from three elements: the air, the heat, and the light.
Correct.
Brilliant.
So that's going to be first and foremost. Then on top of that, it would be great if it was organic, just so it doesn't have pesticides, because we don't want to, remember, pesticides are a toxin, and your micronutrients are your detoxifiers. So more of those toxins you put in, the faster you're going to burn through your micronutrients. So we don't want to,
Yeah, they may have more. Okay, it's kind of tricky, because while the local will have definitely more micronutrients in them, if they're not organic, they're going to use more of your micronutrient bank account to get them clean, to get those toxins out of your body. So it's twofold.
Yeah. And of course, we have our list with the Fab 14 and the Terrible 20, shows the 20 foods that you should buy organically because of high pesticide residue and potentially genetic modification, and which 14 foods you don't really have to because they've been shown to have low pesticides and they're never genetically modified.
I'll make that available to all your people.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And then cooking and non-cooking.
Yeah.
What's the deal here?
Cooking ruins your food. Lightly cook for longer periods has the least amount of depletion. You never want to just boil something in water unless you're making soup and you're drinking the water, because that's really where the micronutrients will end up. It's going to end up in the broth and not in the vegetable itself. So light steaming, and you also want to put some butter on top of it, because you need the fat in order to absorb the fat soluble micronutrients.
Gotcha.
So really don't overcook things. Eating some things raw every single day is fabulous. We do recommend having a salad, but you also don't want to eat some things raw. You don't want to have raw cruciferous vegetables.
No, you actually want to cook those. That's the exception to the rule. You need to break down that fiber in order for the body to absorb the micronutrients in that. So you would never want to eat that raw. You're not going to absorb the nutrients.
That's your broccoli and your cauliflower.
Yeah, any of the cruciferous vegetables. And Mira made a good point. If you're going to, those micronutrients go into the water, so make that into a soup or use it for a sauce. Also, a lid on top of the pot when you're cooking, because those micronutrients will go out through the steam as well.
And one more, is there anything else regarding food preparation, such as we hear with garlic, like eating a clove of garlic is not the same, and in fact, it's not like you can eat 10 cloves of garlic. It doesn't matter, like unless it's broken into pieces or mashed, you ain't getting anything. Are there other things like that?
We have a bunch of them in report, and also just on the garlic thing, yes, you have to chop it, but you always want to chop it at least 15 minutes before you put it into something to cook. And you always never want to leave it cooking for more than 15 minutes because it actually gets rid of, it's called allicin, is actually the sulfuric compound that actually has all those great aspects for cold healing. And for antiviral and all those great things. It's called allicin. And so you want to just make sure you don't overcook it, or else all that benefit is gone.
Gotcha.
I think colds are reduced 63% when you have garlic twice a day. And people who actually have garlic actually have one day faster recovery, even if they do catch a cold. So there's some pretty great studies about what garlic can do.
I don't know that I can think off the top of my head any other things that need to be prepared in advance like that. And you know, one of the big things is don't prepare too far in advance any of your foods. You know, a lot of times people chop up, they're going to have a fruit thing, you know, a fruit platter. So, you know, 3 days ahead, let's get it all chopped up now, stick it in the refrigerator, and it's being exposed to the air and to the light. And so, again, you know, keep everything whole into the very last minute and prepare fresh at that time if you can.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I love all of this motivation around micronutrients, because what we're going to dig into next are studies showing that if we don't keep our micronutrients top of mind, I don't care how many calories we cut and how many hours we spend on the treadmill, we may not be serving ourselves as best as we could, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definite links, and I guess our studies all started with one major study that made us start to look at why, you know, was there a link in the first place? So
yeah,
let's have a big study.
So yeah, okay. So let's talk about the big study, and this is the one that kind of got us interested in really looking at this and how it compares with obesity, overweight obesity specifically. Now, of course, those who know us know that we first started working with Mira with her advanced osteoporosis and how we reversed that in 2 years using our micronutrient method, but when we started to look at obesity, I started to notice when I was working with my private clients over 15 years in private practice that when I would prescribe to them a micronutrient regimen, they would do much, much better in the body fat, specifically fat burning aspect and muscle building aspect of their overall training. They wouldn't go into catabolism, they wouldn't break down their muscle as much. And what they were losing on the scale would actually be body fat rather than body weight or muscle, which is what typically people lose when they lose weight. So this study was a study published in 2007 in the journal Economics and Human Biology, and it revealed that when they looked at micronutrient deficient individuals, they found that those individuals had an 80.8% higher chance of being overweight or obese than non-deficient individuals. I mean, this is a huge thing. Now, this may seem like not great news because almost everybody's micronutrient deficient according to the FDA.
99% according to the USDA and FDA are deficient in at least one vitamin or mineral.
Wow.
Right.
So
we're all walking around with some micronutrient deficiencies, which is probably one of the big reasons why we start to see such a huge rise in the obesity epidemic, no matter with all the diets and with all the pills and with all the gimmicks. But if you turn that on its head, wouldn't it stand to reason then if we're micronutrient sufficient, you have an 80.8% greater likelihood of not being overweight or obese? And that's really the take-home message
that
here.
should be on the news. Like, I don't understand why no one's talking about that fact. Like, they have some huge links to being, you know, if we could just say, you know, it just becomes sufficient and your chances of not becoming overweight or obese go up by 80.8%, that's huge.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you're going to be fit and perfect, you know, your ultimate optimal self. You still have to exercise and you still have to eat right and you have to do all this. But look what it does to your overall chances. It brings your chances so low of being overweight or obese. That puts you in a real good fighting position then to put all the other information on top of that and say, okay, now I'm going to put on my nutritional philosophy, my whatever dietary philosophy is, and all my bonuses and all my knowledge about exercise and all my knowledge about, you know, just everything else on top of it to create this kind of really, you know, optimal self or optimal lifestyle.
And it seems like while that number is so high that I imagine some viewers may think that's too good to be true, but actually it's too obvious to be false, right? Because all we're talking about is, like, if you don't give your car oil, you probably have a 90% higher chance of it breaking down, right? Because systems have things they need, and vitamins and minerals are essential. So if you don't have that which you need to not be sick, chances are you're going to get sick. Right.
I wish people would I just say it again, Jonathan. I mean, you need people to understand this. When you don't get the essential things your body needs, you will break down, and break down in human terms mean these lifestyle and health conditions. It's not chance that if you're not sufficient, you're going to get these things. So why are we even talking about anything else? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Why are we talking about anything else? Why aren't we starting with micronutrient sufficiency and building from there? And this is what we've been doing backwards all along.
Yeah, when people start a diet, I mean, we really want them to understand this should be the first thing you do. Look at your micronutrients and then build up to macronutrients and then build up to your workout program and everything else you want to do. Because unless you get these things down here, it's going to be a real problem later. Yeah. I mean, just food cravings alone, we can talk about a little bit about food cravings if you want. food cravings is just one example of micronutrient deficiencies wreaking havoc in the diet and then causing you to be obese. A lot of elderly people have a zinc deficiency, and zinc deficiency makes it so that you can't taste your food.
Wow.
You'll notice if you ever see a lot of elderly people going grocery shopping or something, they're always buying a lot of candies, always buying a lot of the same exact things because they have intense flavors. So that's just one micronutrient that has been linked to overeating. Animals who have zinc deficiencies in studies will actually eat more of the same foods just to try to get the flavor out of it.
Right. So does that make sense? I mean, if you've got an elderly person and you notice that they're starting to put on weight, you know, this is going to be a major thing. Right. If they can't taste the food, they just want to keep putting it in. And that taste receptor is also sending signals to the brain, and it's sending signals that there's specific micronutrients coming in. So, you know, we're just like one big kind of computer receptor system. If our bodies first visually see color, we start to say, oh my gosh, that color tells me that there's specific micronutrients in those foods that I need to survive. That's why fruits, you go to a fruit and vegetable stand, it's full of color. It's no you know,
that's why they make
all the candies the same. So go into a candy store. What does it look like? It looks like fruits and vegetables. So it attracts us. And then, of course, when we eat that sugar, we become addicted to it because, I mean, we know that there's studies out of the University of Bordeaux in France studied sugar, and they found that it's more addictive than cocaine. More addictive. I mean, I can't think of anything much more addictive than cocaine, but sugar is one of them. And then we eat the sugar, and it blocks our ability to absorb two very vital micronutrients when we're talking about cravings, food cravings specifically, calcium and magnesium. So calcium and magnesium are really at the epicenter of food cravings. You know, a lot of people think it's just poor discipline. You know, I've tried, and I ate a certain way, and I followed this diet, and I did everything right, and I lost 50 pounds. And look, everybody around me is telling me how great I did. And my family is giving me positive, you know, reinforcement. My coworkers are, and I bought a whole new wardrobe, and I feel great. And I look in the mirror, and I'm the person I always wanted to be. So why do you ultimately pick up that Big Mac again? Why are you ultimately chowing down on donuts again? And why do you regain the weight? If we can answer that question, we can get to the basis of really, ultimately, we don't have a weight loss issue in America. We have a weight regain issue in America. And so we're gaining that weight back again because of the deficiencies in calcium and magnesium. Because when we're deficient in these things, it makes us crave sugar and salt.
The Monell Research Center actually did some studies on this, and they basically found that whenever you get a deficiency in either the salt, in either the calcium or the magnesium, it's the beginning of these food cravings. And they did a lot of studies with animals and salt licks and stuff like that, but they did it with humans, and they found that basically what happens is, you know, you crave something that's really sweet because you have this magnesium deficiency, and then you eat something that's sweet that has sugar in it, and your deficiency gets even worse because it lacks magnesium from getting into your body. So it just keeps bringing down your sufficiency level. When I had advanced osteoporosis, my thing was literally Swedish fish. And if you live in New York City, you know that there's these candy stores down every single street. You can't even go a block. And I used to literally go in and always grab something sweet. And now it's so crystal clear to me. I was getting this and I was feeding the deficiency, which was just further robbing my bones. And that's really true of salty things as well.
Yeah, when you eat a salty food or you have that salt craving that you can't, so people are really kind of two groups of individuals. They're either a salty or a sweet. And me, I'd much rather have salty foods. Mira was a sweet-aholic, you know, she was a sugar-aholic.
She's a sweetie. She's a sweetie. Just say it. She's a sweetie.
Thanks, honey.
Which that makes a lot of sense. Now, so when you eat a salty snack, that salt goes in and it robs the calcium from your bones. It pulls the calcium out of your bones, brings it into the bloodstream, tricks your body into thinking the calcium deficiency is over. But of course, it also blocks the body's ability to absorb more calcium, and this just becomes a vicious cycle. So bottom line, get rid of those two deficiencies. And of course, when you look at your typical multivitamin, Jonathan, what are you going to find? Go pick one out of your medicine cabinet. Anybody watching right now, I guarantee your multivitamin does not have 600 milligrams of calcium and 400 milligrams of magnesium like it should.
And if you're taking a liquid, chances are there's sugar in there.
Yeah.
Which is just insane to do that to somebody. Additionally, another thing is, just on a side note, another thing about sugar is it also blocks vitamin C from getting into receptor sites, which is why every single January after the holiday season, the number one thing that hits is the cold and flu season.
Yep.
And that's because everyone's been eating sugary treats.
Wow.
So if you normally get that, you know, New Year, New You cold, then you should probably, you know, try to cut back on the sweets during the holiday season this year, and you'll watch that you have a much better likelihood of not getting it.
Yeah.
So many truth bombs in there, Jayson and Mira, and one that I really want to highlight because, again, when we've been so brainwashed with just like calories, one, we've heard, and it's somewhat true, that one of the reasons sugar is bad for us is it's empty calories. But what you guys have exposed...
Naked calories.
Naked calories, yes, naked. What you've exposed here is hugely powerful. When we eat these processed garbage foods, not only are we not getting micronutrients, but these foods they're almost negative nutrition, if I'm understanding properly. They're not just not giving us what we need. They are ripping whatever we have left of what we do need away. It's almost like the counterpoint to healthy foods. It negates them in a way.
Right. We call these everyday micronutrient depleters. Depleters is a word we made up, obviously, but we call them everyday micronutrient depleters, or EMDs. And these are the things that over time, we call them the stealth little thieves. And what they do is they're robbing you of the micronutrients that you do have in your body, and sugar is one of them. So it continuously lowers your micronutrient bank account, as we put it. And sugar is one, high fructose corn syrup is one.
Fructose just in general.
Fructose in general.
Yeah, these foods actually...
Exercise.
They need micronutrients in order to be metabolized. So they don't bring any with them. That's the thing. So you got your crystalline white sugar, right? Which, by the way, now is coming from genetically modified sugar beets 55% of the time in processed foods.
Which have been proven, now GMOs are proven to actually cause weight gain as well.
Yeah. But then your body can't do anything with them because they don't have any micronutrients. Micronutrients help with the metabolism. So then they have to use yours. So the more sugar you eat, like you said, you start burning through your micronutrients faster. So they become an anti-nutrient, actually. It's like a black hole. They actually suck nutrition out of you. And they aren't bringing anything good.
We highlight like 12 to 15 of them in the book of all these EMDs that we located that appear either in your foods or things you do to yourself due to lifestyle that are robbing you after you do the addition to what you're actually taking in. These are the subtraction parts that nobody looks at very often.
Brilliant. Well, we now understand that we've got to have these essential micronutrients to be properly functioning, and if we're not, it's non-negotiable. We're going to get sick and break down. We've figured out ways now that much of what the American population is eating is not only micronutrient poor, but is micronutrient negative, for lack of better terms. Tell me some more about some of the most specific and shocking studies around if you're deficient in this micronutrient, this will predictably happen.
Vitamin D. Vitamin D, they're calling it the skinny vitamin after all. There's a lot of good studies about vitamin D. And if you think about it, I mean, a lot of people think that they become thinner in the summer because it's bathing suit season or something. Or if you've ever noticed, lay in the sun for a while. You're going to notice that you aren't so hungry anymore. And that's because deficiency in vitamin D actually makes it so that your leptin isn't working. Now, leptin is going to tell you that you're full. So you're laying out in the sun, and all of a sudden you feel fine, you don't need food. But the minute winter rolls around and we're not getting the vitamin D, all of a sudden we keep getting that. We always feel hungry, and we need more food to snack on, and that's vitamin D's power.
Yeah. Vitamin
D, women tested, I mean, if there's no other reason to take a supplement, women who are vitamin D deficient are on average 16 point, I think it's nearly
16.3 pounds.
16.3 pounds heavier.
Jeez.
So, ladies, get the vitamin D, lose the 16 pounds. I mean, it's a clear indicator in studies.
Yeah, that same study showed that not only was vitamin D deficiency that 16.3 pounds difference, which is big enough for anybody, but it also slowed the growth of fat cells. It reduced the leptin, and it also reduced the number of fat cells. Now, this is another thing people don't realize. They go get liposuction, right, and they suck out all this fat cells. What the doctors didn't tell them is that your fat cell really can grow to any size that it wants. So you might not have 2 million fat cells anymore, but your fat cell can grow to as big as you want. So you can gain all that weight back with even reduced number of cells. You don't want a lot of fat cells, but when you're vitamin D sufficient, you'll also have less fat cells too. So all your fat cells can grow bigger, and obviously the less fat cells you have ultimately is better.
Jayson and Mira, I love that we're, again, raising people's consciousness about micronutrients, but I want to protect folks because I can see we're not the only people, right? There are food edible product manufacturers out there who are using micronutrients for nefarious purposes, right? You pick up this sugary yogurt-esque thing, which is just garbage, and it's like, good source of vitamin D. And then I'm like, oh, I remember what Jayson and Mira said. If I eat this yogurt, which is a good source of vitamin D, I'm going to lose 16 pounds, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, we're not selling that, guys. Anyone's confused about that. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that in our perfect world, we'd say about 2,000 IU of vitamin D, and your yogurt isn't going to have that. Doesn't mean yogurt's not a bad snack. I mean, yogurt's really high in protein, and protein and fat satiate. So, I mean, we'll say yogurt's great for that reason. We also, just on yogurt, if you really want to know, we don't want you to get one that's not organic because we don't want the synthetic growth hormones, which are also linked to obesity.
Yep.
So we want to make sure that you're watching out for that as well and get an organic yogurt.
Yeah, but just on that note, yogurt is actually the number one food shown to what was it, the number one weight loss food. I think when Harvard did their study, it was the food that when eaten every day made people lose the most weight. Now again, if you're not a dairy person, that's fine, but yogurt is coming to the top of the heap when it comes to diet foods.
Well, and how do we, Jayson and Mira, how do we protect ourselves from this, let's call it a negative micronutrient ad campaign there's a big difference between the various yogurts, right? And it's very easy for me as Kraft or Unilever to buy a little bit of synthetic X, vitamin QXJ, and just dump it into garbage. So the back of the cereal box says an excellent source of all these vitamins and minerals, but dissolving a vitamin pill in a can of Coke doesn't seem to make it healthy. So how do we actually determine if something is a good source of micronutrients? Well,
it's probably not packaged.
Yep, there you go.
Don't buy the box, the bag, or the bottle.
Yeah.
Those are going to be good giveaways. The less processed something is, the less of the micronutrients will be ruined in the process.
Gotcha.
So that's a good giveaway. Adding them in is just not the same thing. I mean, first of all, they're not necessarily in the right ratios. It's someone doing that to basically try to make it what we call misinformation and marketing.
Well, when they process the food, they've taken out those micronutrients, so they want to fortify, but they're not fortifying correctly. Oftentimes they'll say, well, if a little bit is good, more is better. Let's just get it in there so we can put it on the box side of, like, I don't want to call out a brand, but everybody knows the cereal brand that you're supposed to have 100% of all these vitamins in it, and that works really good. It's just like a vitamin pill.
Yeah.
And vitamin pills really have a major flaw as well. Fortification is just that. A lot of people say, well, I don't supplement. Well, you do if you eat rice or cereal or bread or anything else that's been fortified, because that's what your government is doing. They know that if you're micronutrient deficient, we're going to have more and more of these diseases. So what they've said is, wait a minute, you process so much of the micronutrients and the nutrition out of this food, you got to put something back. That's not the way you want to get your micronutrients. You want to try to get it from what we call the rich food, the most natural food. When we say a food first, we're definitely not saying processed food first. Now, a little processed food here and there, we understand. People are busy. But you want to try to get your micronutrients from natural whole foods first. If you're going to supplement, then know what it is and how you're supposed to supplement. Vitamins and minerals cannot just be thrown into one big bag and just swallowed in a pill. It doesn't work like that. There's no food with every single vitamin and mineral in it. Food has an innate wisdom. There's certain vitamins and certain minerals in specific foods so that your body can utilize them and absorb them properly. So why we think throwing everything into one pill or into one processed box works, I don't know, but it's not working. And you definitely can't count on those micronutrients as adding to your sufficiency level.
Also, and just be careful also with these vitamin waters and stuff like that. People think that they're getting them. First of all, you're getting a handful of them that were randomly chosen because they're going to give you their focus or energy, or they're purple and it gives you calm, or whatever these things are. But, I mean, those types of things, micronutrients, when they're left in water, can combine to create soluble salts and do other nasty things inside that bottle. So we're not big believers in that either.
Yeah.
Jayson and Mira, I know you have so many studies to share with us, and I'm sorry, but you guys are so interesting that I'm coming up with all these questions. I can't resist. So another question. So we've talked about calories, again, missed the point. So then we get down more into macros and get into micros. Is there a level below or next to micros, such as like these phytochemicals or some of the, is there another class of stuff below the surface? For example, I know a wonderful nutritional researcher who I respect very much, who is not a vegan, but he mentions very openly and honestly that there is an entire class of things we need that are only found in plants. And are there other things besides micronutrients which are way below the surface but are essential to optimal health?
Well, they'd still be considered a micronutrient because we need the micro quantities. So these are
just
still
not an essential micronutrient.
whether or not we've termed them essential yet, you know, and yet being the operative word there. So there's so many things. There's so many different micronutrients that we don't even know about. We're just discovering in food, and that's plant-based and animal-based foods. You know, we're just in our infancy when we're really dealing with the micronutrients. Remember, vitamins were only discovered 100 years ago. 100 years ago. Yeah. The first multivitamin was only 70 years ago. There's a good chance your grandparents saw this birth of this whole idea. So supplemental science, or just micronutrient science in general, is new. And absolutely, it wouldn't be a parallel. It would just be part of that whole micronutrient concept. And eventually we may label those as essential as well. And more than likely, definitely, there are more essential micronutrients to be discovered.
Yeah, I mean, like alpha lipoic acid isn't essential. It's not classified as an essential. However, in studies, basically, alpha lipoic acid, what is the one about alpha lipoic acid?
It regenerates all the other antioxidants. So, you know, when an antioxidant, vitamin or mineral, goes through it works on a free radical and donates its electron, it kind of becomes useless. But alpha lipoic acid comes in and recharges that antioxidant, and it makes it so it can work again. So this is a really important antioxidant to have.
The cool thing about that one is it works both in water and in fat. So it's water soluble and fat soluble. Yeah. And then the other cool thing about it is in studies, when rats were given alpha lipoic acid, they just naturally ate less. They just chose to eat less. One supplement, they just decided they were going to eat less, and secondary, work out more. It's just the weird thing. They had the little rat running thing, right? You know, they could go in circles if they chose to.
Yeah.
They were given the same exact foods to choose from as the ones that weren't given alpha lipoic acid.
Yeah.
And the rats randomly chose to run around more and to eat less. Like, wouldn't that be cool if you just decided, like, you know, I'm just going to be more energetic, and I'm also not going to want food as much? I mean, that's how powerful these little things are.
Yeah.
And it really makes me so happy because it is a great example of how our bodies are not broken, right? Like we don't need to feel these constant cravings for food, and we don't need, like, if we are eating too much and exercising too little, that's not some moral failing. That is a symptom of these underlying dysfunctions and deficiencies. And it's not about just eating less and exercising more. It's about correcting those problems so that we just accidentally move the right amount and eat the right amount. Is that on the right track?
It's absolutely on the right track. And I think if we understood that as scientists, we start to realize that these individuals are not lazy, or they're not individuals who are undisciplined. If we start to look at micronutrient deficiency as being that thing that's causing them to crave the food, even when they're logically, I mean, these are very smart individuals. They know that eating 8 or 10,000 calories a day is going to make them overweight or obese. It's going to shut them into this, you know, this box that they don't want to be in, and they're trying to get around that. But what their body is really doing, they're just more in tune with their body telling them, hey, you need to eat more food or you're never going to reach your micronutrient sufficiency level. We need that. That goes back to our ancestors to be able to be fertile, to be able to reproduce, to be able to live. If you're not getting enough of those micronutrients, that's going to be some people as such a strong signal to go eat more food that's when they start overeating. Of course, today in America, we buy into that. We create these all-you-can-eat buffets. We add sugar, we add salt, we add MSG, we add every single thing we can possibly think of to make them addicted to the food, to make it so that they can't stop eating that. So then they're getting twofold. They're getting the craving from their mind, that physiological, you know, message of saying, you need to eat more or we're really going to have a problem here. And then you've got all these other chemicals saying, you're going to eat more because you're now addicted to this food. Yeah.
Wow.
So the food manufacturers are using this to their advantage, and guess who's stuck in the middle? We as Americans, who, you know, are getting wrong messages every which way. We're now sad. We're now like, oh, I'm so undisciplined and I can't do it. And do I really want to try another diet? I failed 4 to 5 times. I don't want to go back into work and say I'm on another diet and people are like, oh, again, you know, you're just going to gain the weight back again. If you are one of those people, I want you to think about micronutrient deficiency and what we've been talking about today, because you are not undisciplined. You are not lazy. You are not unintelligent. You simply have, your body is simply telling you, that you need more food. And if you get rid of those micronutrient deficiencies, you will be able to control your food cravings. I guarantee it. I've seen it with thousands and thousands of clients.
It's telling you that, like Jayson said, that you need more food, but what it's really telling you is you need more micronutrients from your food.
Right.
What you notice with a lot of these people is they're eating a lot, and you see it's junk. They're eating a lot of junk. And so they're starving. You see them getting bigger and bigger, and yet they're starving. And we just want people to understand that, you know, whatever weight you are, your body is probably starving on the inside and needs these things in order to regulate your hormones, in order to make you understand that you're full. You can't even hear it right now because you've starved yourself of these vitamins and minerals.
You know, Michael Pollan said, and I'll just do a quote from him and give him a shout out. He, in defense of food, he writes, "A diet based on quantity rather than quality has ushered in a new creature onto the world stage. The human being who manages to be both overfed and undernourished, two characteristics seldom found in the body in the long natural history of our species." And I couldn't have said it better. We literally are undernourished, even though we're eating so many calories that we're walking around obese. If we're going to change that equation, we have to start with the universal truth that micronutrient sufficiency is the foundation of optimal health. If we create a sufficient state, the cravings will go away, we'll eat less food, we'll have more energy, our muscles will function better, our metabolism will function correctly, and then we can build a healthy lifestyle on top of that, no matter what kind of dietary philosophy you follow. Great. If you want to be a plant-based person, that's great. If you want to be a paleo, that's great too. But we all have a universal truth. We need to be sufficient in our essential micronutrients. We do that, and then we build a foundation that's really going to stand the test of time.
And in our studies, which we go over a lot in the book, we actually go through each one of these dietary philosophies, and we show the likelihood of them being deficient in very specific micronutrients. There wasn't one that did better than any other. I mean, like, you know, the vegans had specific micronutrients wrong with them, the low carb did, the paleo did, the primal did, and all across the board, everyone was deficient when following these types of diets. So it really is one of those things that just because you think you're eating great, it doesn't mean that we're not talking to you.
Yeah.
Well, Jayson and Mira, this is literally amazing, and I want to give our listeners the vast tool set that you've provided, because I think we've opened everyone's eyes in this time together and gotten them excited. And we've already mentioned your most recent book here, Naked Calories. What other resources and as you mentioned, right, it's always food first. We're just beginning to understand this arena, but we're smart people. Science has been busy over the past 60 years. What scientific advancements can we take advantage of to help address this problem?
Well, first of all, we are food first. So Rich Food, Poor Food. This is the book that we wrote because everyone asked us what foods have a lot of vitamins and minerals. So we highly suggest, if you have trouble going grocery shopping, if you're wondering what foods to eat, that's this book.
Yeah, and as far as advancements go, I mean, supplemental science is really coming forward. You know, our 3 steps just quickly are food first, switch to rich, eat rich foods, foods that are rich in micronutrients. 2, really identify your lifestyle habits that may be depleting micronutrients. We're not saying to change all of them, but be aware so that you can understand what your likelihood of being sufficient or deficient is. And we have a sufficiency quiz that people can take for free too on the website, so they can see where they may be falling on the spectrum of sufficiency, deficiency, and it's free. The third thing is to supplement properly. And really and truly, I kind of talked a little bit about it earlier, but supplements as they're manufactured today on the overall, specifically multivitamins, is really kind of, you know, the same way that the first multivitamins were formulated. They're just thrown together. So real quickly, we created something called the ABCs of optimal supplementation guidelines. And this can be, you can apply this to any supplement you're buying, any multivitamin. First and foremost, A, absorption. If it doesn't disintegrate, you can't absorb it, right? So, you know, 51% of the vitamins that were tested on store shelves didn't disintegrate when Consumer Reports did their study.
Therefore, a waste of money.
Waste of money. You may want to be looking for something in a powdered form so you don't have to worry about disintegration. 2, beneficial quantities. We talked about earlier, your multivitamin probably doesn't have 600 milligrams of calcium or 400 milligrams of magnesium like it should have, 600 instead of 1,000 of calcium, because your body can only absorb 600 at a time. So we call that beneficial quantities. If you're supplementing, make sure you're getting the amount of supplement that you need. We're not mega dose believers. We believe in 100% RDI, so that
on top of your food.
When you add that to your overall good food diet, then you start to create, you reach that optimal zone, right? So we don't want too much. So beneficial quantities, that's the B. C, this is the game changer. competition, micronutrient competition. Science has known now for years that certain vitamins and minerals compete for receptor sites inside the gastrointestinal tract. Well, multivitamin manufacturers haven't really done much about that, have they? They said, here it all is, throw it together. And a lot of people will say that what you're really getting there is expensive urine, and we'd be on that side as well. So one of the things we did, and that we're very proud of, and that we actually used the scientific research to get a patent for, is we looked at what science knew already about what specific micronutrients competed with each other for absorption and utilization, and we mapped those out. And then we separated them into two unique formulas in our product, Nutrients, which is our multivitamin. And we manufactured the multivitamin because there wasn't anything else out there that we could take or we could recommend that was doing this kind of science in the U.S.
I think was it 85% of all the vitamins and minerals in the average one competed?
85%.
85%. When we started looking at that, which we did because I had my osteoporosis and we were trying to reverse it for me, we were like, well, I can't take a multivitamin. That's not going to reverse my bone disease. So we started to look at them. We mapped out all the competitions, and Nutrients is what we came up with.
Right. And then lastly, I was just going to say, lastly, synergy. It's very important that you know what micronutrients are synergistic. Like people might have heard, if you're taking calcium, you want to take vitamin D with it to help the absorption. Or if you're taking calcium, you want to make sure you've got vitamin K2 to get that calcium out of the arteries and into the bones. So again, your multivitamin is not going to have K2 most likely. And if it does, it probably won't have MK4 and MK7. So, you want to make sure that the person who's manufacturing your multivitamin knows a thing or two about micronutrients. And so this is some of the stuff that we've put into the formulation. We're very proud of it. And if people are looking for a new multivitamin, you may at least want to check it out.
Absolutely. Well, Jayson and Mira, and I'll give this shout out, right? Like this, I have taken multivitamins my entire life, and I noticed that they all gave me fluorescent yellow urine. And I never really noticed the difference. And my wife and I have been enjoying Nutrients here for months now. You don't get the fluorescent urine. Definite impact on energy. I've been a big fan. And let's leave our listeners, because I'm personally a fan of your guys' work. I love micronutrients. I think it's great. I think you guys are innovators in this arena. So let's give very clear 3 steps. So I would say step 1 is go to caltonnutrition.com, because a bunch, you said there's a free. Oh, there's a free. Go ahead.
CALTON, because everybody gets that wrong.
So CaltonNutrition.com, we've got the free quiz up there. What would step 2 be?
Well, step 2 is we need to take that quiz and find so go to the site, take the quiz. So that quiz is there. Also,
read the books.
Read the books. Yeah, follow those 3 steps. Those 3 steps to micronutrient sufficiency is so simple to do. We outline it in the book. The book is full color. Can you see that, Jonathan, on your side? Can you hold that up? It's full color. It's easy to read. It's not scientific. On the inside, it's high gloss pages. So don't be afraid of all the science. Yeah, it's fun. It's easy.
And then to supplement, because what you're going to find out when you read it is that chances are in step 1 and 2, those 2 things, the quiz and the book, what you're going to find out is you're probably one of the 99%. I mean, in all honesty, chances are that you're going to fall in that range and that you could be a better you simply by supplementing.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And so if people do want to try Nutrients, we'd be happy to extend a $10 coupon to them from you, Jonathan, from Smarter Science is Slim. So, you can maybe put that coupon code up for people as well if they want to try it.
Absolutely. And it's just so empowering, guys. I really appreciate you bringing this back to the science, bringing this back to that which this isn't even debatable. These are just truths that are being ignored. So Jayson and Mira Calton, thank you so much for joining us today. This is absolutely transformational information.
Thank you so much for putting this all together. We'd appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you. Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed this wonderful information as much as I did. And please remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. We'll chat with you soon.